This video was sponsored by CuriosityStream. For much of human history, light meant safety. Electric lights are today one of the hallmarks of civilization. But in recent years, activists have begun to complain about light pollution caused by too much or the wrong type of artificial light. In the French city of Rennes, some young guys are running around at night turning off shop lights. Is light pollution a real problem, or just something that first world people complain about because they have nothing else to complain about? What could we do about it in any case? And how much of a problem are Elon Musk's Starlink satellites really? That's what we'll talk about today. This is a photo of the night sky in Patagonia. You can clearly see the Milky Way. If you took a photo with the same exposure at night in Barcelona, it would look like this. If you adjust the exposure so that it matches what we see with our own eyes, you'd see this. Artificial lights make the sky glow. You can't see the Milky Way, and you barely see any stars. And that's what the night sky looks like now above most cities in the developed world. Many who live there have never seen the Milky Way. During a major blackout in Los Angeles in 1994, the police received numerous calls because people were worried about this weird cloud in the night sky. All right, you may say, but most people have seen the Milky Way at some point. Yet few have seen the zodiacal light or even know what it is. The zodiacal light comes from sunlight that reflects off dust which floats around in the solar system. The dust is probably mostly from Mars. The zodiacal light, which you see in this photo, is sometimes called the false dawn because it can be mistaken for an upcoming sunrise. Fun fact, Brian May, lead guitarist of the band Queen, did his PhD in astronomy about the zodiacal light. Light pollution is now incredibly common in the developed world. According to a paper from the Light Pollution Science and Technology Institute in Italy, by 2020, 60% of the population in Europe couldn't see the Milky Way. In the USA, that percentage is now at 78%. Light pollution is also the reason that astronomical observatories now must be located in isolated deserts, like the one in northern Chile, or on islands in the middle of the ocean, like Hawaii or the Canary Islands. Okay, you may say, too bad for astronomers, but who really cares? Most of us can live very well without seeing the Milky Way. Indeed, but light pollution doesn't just obscure our view of the night sky. Too much light or the wrong kind of light affects our circadian rhythm, our inner clock that regulates biological functions. The circadian rhythm strongly relies on the input we receive from a certain type of photoreceptor in our eyes. That's not the cones and rods, which are responsible for day and night vision respectively. It's a third type of photoreceptor that was only discovered in the 1990s. It's called the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cell. It's not involved in vision itself. Instead, it allows the body to use light as input to set the clock for the circadian rhythm. It is particularly sensitive to light at the blue end of the spectrum. And if you mess with the input on those photoreceptors, the whole system gets messed up. According to a 2016 report from the American Medical Association, scientists have found links between altered circadian rhythms and insomnia, depression, dementia, diabetes, heart disease, and even cancer. Now, that scientists have found links between this and that doesn't always mean much. But some of those studies leave little doubt that light pollution has a major impact on our quality of life and our health. For example, in a 2016 paper, researchers from Stanford University and NASA interviewed over 15,000 Americans about the amount and quality of their sleep. Then they looked for correlations with nighttime light levels using the GPS coordinates of the respondents' homes and light data from satellites. They found that living in areas with more outdoor lights at night was associated with delayed bedtime and wake-up time and increased daytime sleepiness. It also increased the dissatisfaction with sleep quantity and quality, all with a p-value smaller than 0.0001. That still wouldn't count as a discovery in particle physics, but for medicine, that's an amazingly strong correlation. In 2017, another American team of researchers published the results from a study that tracked the health of 100,000 nurses for 22 years. They found that those who lived in places with more light at night were at an increased risk to develop breast cancer, even after accounting for individual and area risk. It was not a tremendously big increase, just 5% at 95% confidence level, but it wasn't the first such finding. A 2008 study in Israel had also found a link between light pollution and breast cancer, and a 2019 study in Spain, which followed several thousand people over 5 years, found that exposure to light pollution in the blue part of the spectrum specifically was associated with an increased risk of breast and prostate cancer. It's not that the light itself causes cancer, but rather scientists think it's that light pollution, by affecting the circadian rhythm, alters hormone levels, and the link between hormone levels and cancer risk is well established. So, too much light at night isn't good for us, but it's even worse for animals, especially birds. According to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, light pollution kills between 5 and 50 million birds each year in North America alone. The major problem is that the glow above cities makes the birds think that sunrise is near, so they don't get enough sleep, are chronically exhausted, and fall victim to predators or illness more easily. Another animal that suffers from light pollution are sea turtles. When the baby turtles hatch on illuminated beaches, they walk towards the lights rather than towards the sea. There are also animals which hunt at night, like owls, which starve simply because their prey sees them coming. And light pollution is constantly getting worse. A 2017 paper from researchers in Europe and America found that the area lighted at night increases by 2.2% per year worldwide, and in places where light pollution was already present, its brightness increases also by 2.2% per year. Okay, so we have seen that light pollution negatively affects health and quality of life. It isn't good for animals either, and it's getting worse. Now, the world certainly has larger problems than that, but on balance, light pollution is fairly easy to fix with a little advanced planning. That basically means cities must watch out what lights they install. In many places, the old yellowish light bulbs are now being replaced with modern white LEDs. They are cheap, energy efficient, and last long. Their light emission is also much more focused, so they can be directed downward, which reduces the upward glow. That's better for birds and star lovers. So far, so good. But unfortunately, the new LEDs also emit much more light in the blue spectrum. And according to the report from the American Medical Association, which I mentioned previously, these blue-rich LED streetlights appear to be 5 times more disruptive to our sleep cycle than the old streetlights. It would be better to use LEDs that emit more on the yellow end, such as narrowband amber LEDs. Their emission spectrum is also, as the name says, fairly narrow, so it can be more easily filtered out of images, which makes astronomers happy. At present, these LEDs are much more expensive than the blue-white ones, so this is not a common choice. As so often, we'll have to decide whether the improvement in life quality is worth the money. Now, what's with Elon Musk's Starlink satellites? While those also cause light pollution in some sense, they are really an entirely different problem. Musk's company now has about 19,000 of those satellites in orbit. They are aiming for a license to make that as much as 30,000. These satellites provide worldwide internet access, which covers literally the entire globe. But astronomers hate them. The Starlink satellites are fairly small, but they fly low at just 340 kilometers of height. They can be seen like the moon because they reflect sunlight. And because they fly so low, they are brighter than the satellites higher up. The biggest problem with the Starlink satellites, however, is that they can autonomously change their orbits, so astronomers can't schedule observations to avoid them. For example, in November 2019, astronomers at the Cerro Chololo International Observatory in Chile were capturing an image of the night sky, or at least they were trying. That's what came out. The satellites are so bright that they even show up in the observatory webcam. Elon Musk isn't the only one who wants to occupy low Earth orbits. He's just the first one. There's also Amazon Kuiper, Samsung OneWeb, India Astrotech, and 24 more companies. In the long run, we might end up with as many as 100,000 satellites. Connie Walker from the International Astronomical Union said in a recent interview with the BBC, "By the end of a decade, more than 5,000 satellites will be above the horizon at any given time at a typical dark sky observatory location. A few hundred to several thousand of these satellites will be illuminated by the sun." In 2020, researchers from the European Southern Observatory published a paper in which they estimate the impact of these new satellite fleets on their astronomical observations in the visible and infrared. The satellites are a real problem in the 2 hours before and after sunrise, and, as you expect, are more of a problem for images that capture a large part of the sky than for small parts. ESO estimates that between 1 and 40% of images will be affected during the first and last hours of the night. Last month, the International Astronomical Union announced they'd founded the Center for the Protection of the Dark and Quiet Sky from Satellite Constellation Interference. Its purpose is to lobby for legislation that makes the low Earth orbit satellites less disruptive for astronomy. I'm really torn on the issue. On the one hand, I think that the global internet coverage which the satellites may bring is a blessing for many poor and remote regions of the planet. On the other hand, private companies should be a little more respectful of the scientific and cultural good of astronomy. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. This video was sponsored by CuriosityStream. I recently had the pleasure to work with CuriosityStream on some episodes for their YouTube channel about space exploration and what we can do with all those satellites. I had a lot of fun with that. If you want to see the result, I'll leave you a link in the info below. If a full-length documentary is more what you're looking for, check out CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream has thousands of movies and shows about physics, space, medicine, technology, history, everything really. They're adding new ones every week, and you can watch them conveniently on your laptop or phone. On CuriosityStream, you can find, for example, a wonderful documentary about the space robot revolution. It tells you about missions to Mars and to asteroids, and about the many challenges involved in building robots that must work in distant locations where you can't easily repair them. CuriosityStream also has a lot of other documentaries about technology and engineering and space, and the many ways they intersect. As usual, we have a special offer for viewers of our channel, so you can try it out yourself. You can get a subscription for CuriosityStream for a whole year for just $14.99 if you use our link curiositystream.com/Sabine or use the code Sabine at checkout. Thanks for watching. See you next week.